Grouchy Gamer blog post, 6:47 p.m., February 17th. Stupid. All of you are just stupid. The chorus of you saying, just stop it, or this is a prank, you're all a bunch of whiners. The lot of you that are egging me on aren't too much better either. So here's what I decided to do. I can't go back to playing that game because I know the second I do, I'm just going to go back and find every single cutscene that's different now because of the egg. All of you seem to agree the cutscenes don't sound that much different from one another. And that's true, but something about them just draws me in and I can't look away. Instead, we're going to do an old Grouchy Gamer blog staple from when I started this blog all the way back when I was a teenager, and that's video game fan fiction. No more of this game with paper-thin story or graphic depictions of infection. From now on, I'm going to write a compelling and captivating story based on the world I was given in this game. The story will follow Unnamed, one of the early survivors of this apocalypse as they try to make their way out of the jungle. Here we go. I arose as I poked my head out of the makeshift tent hammock hybrid that I bound myself into up in the tree. I breathed a sigh of relief after the best sleep I had in weeks, since the infection started. Every moment, falling asleep felt like it could be my last. I was out on an archaeological dig when this all began. I hardly understood what was happening until I found a group of survivors, escapees from the nearby city. They told me how the outside world had completely collapsed from the introduction of these fungal parasites, who seem to take hold of people and contort their bodies into disgusting mossy vessels for their spores. I took the supplies I had and plunged deeper into the jungle. For the first week or so, this seemed like a prudent move. The survivors had spoke of how the cities completely collapsed, though it took little time at all before I realized how grievous of a mistake this was. The city folk fled into the jungle, drawing all sorts of infected in with them. The humid conditions caused these creatures to thrive beyond what they did in the cityscape. Folks took to calling the species of infected based on their progression. For some, they just looked like humans with fungal growths. These were level 1s. Others had the mossy plant growth blend with their skin and muscle, extending their limbs and hollowing out their eyes, causing them to secrete an iridescent green fluid. These were level 2. On rare occasion, people spoke of level 3s. At this point, the infected became more vines than human, often fusing themselves with an enclosed space and immediately trapping anyone unfortunate enough to cross their path. There were mixed rumors of a level 4, a gigantic being, legs like tree trunks woven in vines, emitting light that instantly infected anyone exposed to it, though many thought, and possibly hoped, they were all tall tales. This was notable because no one knew for sure what caused progression from level 1 to 2 and onwards. However, level 1s after only a short time in the jungle became level 2s. Confined spaces, or other areas thick with viney overgrowths, were basically death sentences for the fools who dared to cross into them, due to the increased risk of a population of level 3s. All survivors who had come to the jungle at this point, myself included, were attempting to escape, fighting the pit in their stomach that they might see if the rumors of a level 4 were real. This was where I found myself, stumbling about in the forest. I found myself chased by a pack of level 2s. It was not the first time I found myself on the ropes. It was common knowledge that people had different levels of resistance to the spores. Some just the mere exposure rendered them into a level 1, the start of the outbreak. Others needed to be directly attacked, and then succumb to the infection. I had sustained multiple hits, multiple grabs, and even a stray spray of the disgusting fungal fluid they shot. I had a decent immunity to it, it seemed. Even early on, I cheated death as I found myself in the grips of 3 level 1 infected. They had grabbed me, started pulling me towards the ground, attempting to have their spores spread from their bodies to mine. One even held its face close to mine. I swear I could even hear it whispering something in my ear, telling me to just relax and enjoy. I found myself relenting as the spores grew on my skin. Each writhing of my body filled me with enjoyment. I could hardly contain myself but embraced the grip and expansion of the mossy substance. Every moment felt like... As I said, I was running from the level 2 infected moments after I had woken up for the day. I saw a break in the trees. I narrowly made it through. The level 2 infected seeming unwilling to follow me into the light of day from their comfortable, dark, humid environment. To my surprise, I emerged right into the same archaeological dig site that I had been excavating when the world fell apart. I noticed a massive tunnel in the ground where we had been doing most of the excavating. We thought we might have discovered an ancient civilization under the ground. It was odd because we had hardly made it that far when I was last here, which was only a few weeks ago. Could my comrades have returned and kept digging, and eventually found the underground civilization? I wondered if it was possible somehow that those ruins provided safe haven against the hordes of infected. I made my way down and into the tunnel. There was a lantern at the entrance, which I picked up and carried with me as I explored the area. As I got deeper, something else helped reflect the light of my lantern. It was a trickle at first, then turning into a steady stream of irradiated green sludge. I reflexively stayed a safe distance away from the stuff, knowing it had some kind of interaction with the higher level infected. The flow of the liquid led me to a most remarkable sight. It was as we expected, an ancient temple, buried. I had no idea of its origins, but the allure of such a sight drew me in. I entered the decaying door, the building covered in moss from ages of being underground. In the middle, there were thick tree roots through what looked to be an altar. There was a cloth seeming to cover something on the altar. I approached, excited to see what artifact awaited me, and what it might tell me about this ancient people. However, when I removed the cloth, I was met with the hollowed face of an infected underneath. What I thought were tree roots sprung to life as they wrapped me up. They pushed me down onto the altar, my face right against the face of this infected. I felt it breathe spores into my lungs as it groaned. I felt the moss start to grow on my skin, the intensity of this creature's infectious power overwhelming me. I felt as the temple started to rise. More and more vines wrapped around me, the intense fungus slowly overtaking more and more of my body. The creature's face contorted, moving up and away from me, higher into the entangled mess of vines. I felt the vines around me pulse. I felt pain as they melded with my skin. Soon, I felt a tingle in my chest, and shortly after, my heart seemed to beat at the same rate as the pulsing of the vines. The monstrosity rose, and I could see out the temple window as it forced its way up from underneath the tunnel. I could tell that the whole tunnel network had once been the extent of its body, but now the structure seemed to tower upwards, using me as some kind of mechanism. The overgrowth started to fill the window, my only glimpse of the outside world. I started to feel intoxicated by the substance that infiltrated my body. My heart raced alongside the creatures, and I saw what was ever left of my skin start to glow pink from this infection. Right before the window fully closed, I could see a beam of violet light emit into the world. I knew what I had become. I had become a part of this superior being. I was now going to forever be a part of it, worshipping it. I was going to spread its infection throughout the whole world. I was an insignificant speck, meant only for its consumption. I felt euphoric as this completely overtook me. I wanted nothing else but to have this, even if it cost me my life. I would not resist it. I would simply let it have me. Let it have my life. There was just no better feeling. What have I become? Grouchy Gamer blog post, 11:02 p.m., February 17th. It doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't matter what you say. Here's a recap of what I did next. I don't know why I'm sharing it, maybe because documenting it is the only thing I can bring myself to do other than play this game. I obviously went back to every single thing I had fought before, and gave up to it while holding the egg. It is worth noting that the egg seems to respond to the green sludge in the tunnel the same way that it responds to the purple light. Does that mean anything to me at this point? Not really, other than the fact that Mike designed the game so you could take the egg all the way back to the beginning area. I started with a level 2 inside the treatment facility. In the cutscene, Redacted hands over the egg to it like before, and the creature consumes it, more ravenously than the level 1 did. Then vines seem to burst from the creature, into the walls of the facility. Those same vines spring forth from the ground and bind Redacted by the legs. The walls of the facility seem to grow with vines and moss. Redacted is pulled down into the fungal mess below. It cuts to the sky above, and the sun moves in high speed throughout the sky, simulating days passing. It returns to the mossy overgrowth, where a faceless figure enters through the door. They are immediately entangled with vines and burst into the fungal mess that consumes their body. The text reads, "You are a part of the enjoyment. You will never escape. You will never stop." I returned to the tunnel and ran into a crawler and gave up. The crawler submerged the egg in the sludge of the tunnel before consuming it like before. Suddenly, the tunnel began to fill with rushing green fluid, and Redacted had to barely hold on to a wall for support before being swept away. It cut to Redacted holding its breath for its life. It looked to be on the verge of being about to gasp and fill its lungs with liquid, before the mutated crawler swam in it like a shark and constricted Redacted's waist, forcing it to inhale the fluid as Redacted's skin turned green and the life flickered away. The text read, "You are one. You enjoy this. This will always be a part of you." The tunnel spider had a bit of a different reaction to the egg. It cracked it open and force-fed the contents of the egg to Redacted. Redacted, face away from the screen as always, seemed reluctant to eat it, but as it did, its body started to change. Redacted's arms stretched out, and moss seemed to almost spring forth from the pores of its skin. It lumbered out of the room and into the tunnel. In just the action of eating the egg, Redacted had immediately become a level 2 infected. The text returned to red, a sign of this alternate voice not meant to be Mike. It said, "See all that can be done. Bring it to me now. I will change everything for you. Give you a whole new world to enjoy." Ignoring the commands of what I assumed to be the level 4 infected out in the distance, I went back to try to backtrack to the initial starting area. At one point, I found an encounter that was going to inevitably end me. I simply rebooted the game rather than see a cutscene I had already seen. When I did this, the game wouldn't start without an update. I really should have questioned why an EXE game, emailed to me, could have updates pushed to it. I should have questioned why it could take control of my camera, access my files, do whatever it wanted. This game was clearly malware, but I was too obsessed to care. I let it update and continued on. I managed to trigger an encounter with 3 level 1s in the starting area. They seemed to grow feral upon being offered the egg. They all seemed to claw at one another before calming down and staring at me. They each grabbed a shoulder, elbow, or leg and stared. To my surprise, an option popped up where it asked me to select which one to give it to. As mentioned, level 1s have probably tens of different unique designs, so each of them did look a little different. I chose the design that I liked the most, and it ate the egg. Then emitted green spores and sludge from its body, as the other 2 level 1s turned into complete copies of it, and so did Redacted. The red text spoke again. "You have chosen how to shape this world. Now give the egg to me, and I will allow you to shape it further." From that point on, the level 1s no longer had unique designs. They were all copies of the one I had chosen. The line where the lore of this game met this meta-narrative was getting blurrier and blurrier by the moment. On a whim, I went back to the very beginning, the cryo chamber Redacted emerged from. I had been counting the steps, and I suspect the egg just narrowly avoided cracking before I got there. I placed the egg into the cryo chamber. Normal white text simply read, "Someone else's problem now." Something about that gave me a brief moment of comfort. The idea that Redacted didn't have to carry the weight of the world on its shoulders for once. I reset the game. A strange sentimental feeling overtook me, and resetting the game rather than getting an inevitable game over cutscene made me feel like this Redacted could live peacefully. I almost felt the strength to leave the game behind for now, but then something struck me. I hadn't given the egg to the attendant. I wondered how that cutscene would end. I restarted the game and went to do it. That was when something troubling occurred. In the cutscene, Redacted had to basically feed the egg to the attendant who was stuck in place behind the mirror. After doing this, the vine stretched out and bound Redacted in the center. I watched as the head of the attendant seemed to grow upwards and out of frame. The vine seemed to penetrate Redacted's flesh and almost seemed to pulse. Soon, the scene panned out to show a giant Titan level 4 arise from the waste treatment facility. The other level 4, in the distance, walked over. Redacted was still in the chest of the creature. The existing level 4 seemed to tap it gently. Then the 2 titans shook hands, and with both of their beams, seemed to turn the entire cityscape into a lush jungle of the fungal infection, seemingly wiping out any humans left there. The text read, "This is but a fraction of the future we can have." It said my name, the name I don't have anywhere on this blog. I slammed my computer shut, in frustration, before turning it back on to type this last bit out. That had to be part of the update that Mike pushed to my computer. He took that from my writing and put it into the game. He even knew I didn't do the area yet. I was being watched. I'm done with this. Mike, if you're reading this, I hope you go to hell. Grouchy Gamer blog post, 2:15 a.m., February 8th. I can't sleep. All I can see is the infected, and all the various ways they have captured and infected Redacted. I don't think I'll be able to sleep again until I have closure. I am finishing this game. I went back to the desert area, outside of the waste treatment facility. I tried again and again to get the frame-perfect pathing that I needed to get through, without stepping into the light or being ganged up on by a horde of infected following me. The game was punishing, and I was sure there was an exact route I would need in order to get to the end. Luckily, I had either exhausted all the options for various cutscenes that could happen, or my sleep-deprived brain just couldn't process any new ones that I had not already seen. So all that was left to do was to constantly retry getting through the urban wasteland. Each time I did it, I got better at it, realizing slight inefficiencies in my routing I could correct. The infected still froze in the purple light as it hit them, and they always followed me in the most direct path they could, so their pathing could be manipulated so that they ended up in the light more often. This gave me more of a grace period and less of them to fight. Eventually, I think I even noticed there were so many of them stalled out, it created a logjam for ones that couldn't even move from behind the shadows. The egg was tricky and also required perfect precision because, as mentioned a few posts back, the game state continues to progress while you're in the menu. Eventually, though, I made it to where the rolling landscape ended. I stepped through a tile that seemed to indicate it was going to take me somewhere else. And it did. The new area was called The Altar. I groaned. It didn't look anything like an altar. In the update, Mike must have swapped its original name to align with my short story. It was just what appeared to be a mountain. As I proceeded to go up it, the light seemed to be on the same cycle. But something was different now. When the light turned on and an encounter started, the creature was called the Titan. In the distance, the colossal infected stood, stepping closer with each step as it bathed me in purple light from its face. It looked like a giant walking redwood tree, but covered in moss and with a human shape to its larger branches. And of course, the massive face with hollow eyes. I knew there was no fighting this thing, so I proceeded to hit run. It failed a handful of times, but to my surprise, the creature made no attack in response. The animated sprite in the distance just continued to step closer, getting bigger as it approached. Eventually, the light stopped emitting, and running finally worked. I continued stepping up the mountain towards the destination. Every cycle, the Titan got closer to me. I saw vines start to wrap around the mountain, and it eventually did start attacking me. It did massive amounts of damage. Once I was able to run again, I did. I saw, just at the corner of the screen, this hole in the ground. I just narrowly made it to the last tile right before it, but before I could do anything, the purple light shone again. I hit run unsuccessfully. The Titan seemed to tower over me. Its attacks were now more powerful than ever. Redacted dropped to 0 HP. The cutscene that played was different than I expected. It cut to various other locations in the world. Survivors were shown trying to escape all different kinds of infected, some types of level 3s and 2s that I had never seen before. Many failed, getting dragged off, away from fellow survivors. I watched as several of them consumed sludge, or had spores overtake their bodies. It was a grueling 3 minutes of this, but I did not look away for a moment. Eventually, the scene returned to the long, thick branches of the Titan, pinning Redacted down as the egg remained clutched in his arm. The red text said, "It must be given willingly. Give it to me willingly. Let me show you what perfection can look like." It restarted me back at the treatment facility, egg in my inventory. I proceeded again. I was desperate to get to the end again. On my first try, I made it and did my frame-perfect inputs, going up the mountain so that this time I should be able to make it right before the light turns on me again. However, as I made it there, the encounter started either way. The Titan stared at me again, basically as close as before, but this time there was no purple light. I had the option to run, and it would likely succeed. With dregs of HP left, I could run, drop the egg into the hole. That seemed like it should be the end of the game. This was it. I was finally here. I could also hit give up, though. I could see the ultimate cutscene that Mike had prepared for me. I trembled, my fingers tapping between the two options on my menu.